What's up, humans? Welcome back to the Human Music Podcast. I'm Luke Rain, and this is episode 68, Transitioning Out of Lockdown. During the quarantine, many producers have had way more time to sit in the studio and work on music. But lots of places in the world are starting to open up again, for now at least. That's why this week we're talking about getting back out into the world, playing and watching music events, FOMO, carving out time for music, embracing change, refilling your creative well, and not getting burnt out. Our song of the week that you can hear behind me is 2020 by Rip Kenny, honoring this year that we've been sitting inside. Then you should definitely support our sponsors. First, Dojo TV. This is free producer live stream classes from the Producer Dojo Senseis, and sometimes we even record this podcast there. Next up, the weekly download, where you can learn from Ill Gates himself in his private weekly group lessons and get access to over 240 more episodes in the archive for just $20 a month. Finally, guest practices, where you can learn from Seth Drake at the Approach Institute. He is hands down the best engineer we know, and you can learn those high-level engineering skills from him. Best of all, your first class over there is free. All right, humans, let's get on into the episode.
Hello, people of Earth. This is Tesco with Rip Kenny and Trap Jesus, and you're listening to the Human Music Podcast. Woo!
Human Music Podcast. I like it. Oh, shit!
Sunday!
It is the Human Music Podcast live on
It is.
Dojo TV.
The one and only.
Wow, that was what a delay.
Yeah, it's this plugin called Saying It More Times Except Quieter.
Oh, who makes that? Is
Yeah,
that like Native Instruments? Or
that sounds
Yeah,
fancy.
that instrument is native to my vocal cords.
Native human. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that go on Black Friday sale? I'll have to pick
It
that up.
does. It does. Yes, Human Life is much cheaper on Black Friday. You'll get stampeded
was a stock plugin.
over a 50%
Oh.
off flat screen.
The human experience is cheapened on Black Friday. Oh my god, that's hilarious.
I mean, that's not wrong either.
No, it's not. But what's good? Big up chat. Big up chat.
Shouts to the chat. But yeah, speaking of the value of human life, COVID isn't over, but it is lesser or not.
Yes.
Either way, people are going back outside in a big way. And, you know, it's been a mixed bag being in lockdown for producers. On the one hand, fuck lockdown. But on the other hand, hey, look at all this extra time where I can have no excuses not to sit right here in my studio and only do music or music-related things. How many more hours do we have to watch tutorials and work on tunes, right? But
Too many.
all right, maybe. You know, I feel like I might have
There's never
overdid
too
it.
many. But definitely, it's coming up there.
Yeah, but now here we are. You know, it's currently July 2021, and you know things have been on an opening up type of swing, depending on where you live, maybe more or less. You know, everywhere's got different rules, but what we want to know is, what does that mean for people like us who are going to have some less time to be in the studio, but maybe more time to be out at shows? What's up with the balance? You know, how do we keep a balance? How do we feel about it? Are we scared to get back out there? Are we excited? A healthy mixture of the two? Let's talk about it. Let's start with emotions. How y'all feeling about this change?
Man, weird. Life's crazy. Like, I don't know what more there is to say than that. But you know, just trying to stay level-headed about it. Obviously, coming out of a crazy time, shit probably won't be the same for a while. You know, I hope everybody here hasn't been affected too heavily. Everybody here in the chat. But you know, it's like with every single kind of big change like this comes new opportunity, and I think you just got to orient yourself in that way and just try to make light of the grim situation. I mean, it is pretty grim, shouldn't necessarily be overlooked, but still, like, if it didn't get you, then keep up the good fight and try and look out for the new opportunities. That's what I'm mostly stoked about.
Yeah, I'm like struggling between like, being able to justify like absolute hermit mode writing this album, and now it's like, oh, I should. There's the other things that like are fun that I want to go do now, but then I'm also like, oh wow, now I have like less time to work on this album. I kind of gotten accustomed to like only doing that. And so struggling like with that, but also like being able to actually like go see a show and get like inspiration from like, other stuff is something I'm really looking forward to. I got my first festival booking for the end of this summer in September, so I'm pretty happy about that. That's definitely on the
You
up
heard
and
it
up.
here first.
Yeah, I
Breaking
can't.
news.
Yeah, I can't talk details yet because it hasn't been announced. But you guys will be the first to hear, one of the first to hear it at the very least on some Tuesday.
Depends which day.
Yeah,
You
if
find
it's a
out
live
about
show
it.
or
And
not.
plus the about 2-week delay we have between recording and airing episodes. So you on the podcast will not be the first to hear. I just did the math in my head. It's not going to
Yeah.
work out. But if you
Unless
follow Rip Kinney at Rip Kinney Music
true,
on the socials,
then
you will actually be among the first to hear. So go follow at Rip Kinney Music. Well, you're at it. You're sitting right there in the same search bar. You might as well type at I am Tesco and at Luke Rain Music. And, if you're feeling really saucy on Instagram, at What Would Trap Jesus Do? And follow all of us while you're following at the Human Music Podcast or at Human Music Pod on Twitter. So now that
Proving
we've
to jump your IQ up 50 points and
at
True.
least,
at least.
at least.
yeah,
We have done no double-blind, placebo-controlled experiments for those claims, but we're
tiny
confident.
font.
Somebody comes on and talk really fast. Not available in Alaska.
Please talk to your doctor and see if this is right for you.
Oh man, but yeah, I feel you guys. Having the opportunity to get back out is really exciting. But I've also noticed I've personally been embracing this whole get back out to the world thing since I got vaccinated. My 2 weeks after my second shot was just in time to fly to my homie's wedding in San Francisco, and so I was around an amount of people at that time that felt really big. And then since then, I've been getting invited to go, to different parties, DJ some parties and small shows, and that's been really cool. And getting around people, making new friends again for the first time in a long time. That feels really good. Those cool friendships where you really connect with somebody, have a good conversation after a show. Like, I did not realize how much I missed that part of life. I did
Yeah.
not know how much I needed that. And man, I needed that.
Yeah,
I feel that.
you definitely underestimate, especially for someone like you, who I'd say is fairly extroverted. Like I remember reading something like introverts like recharge when they're alone, and extroverts recharge when they're like with other people and then like enjoying the company of meeting new people, just like you just said. So if you're an extrovert, COVID was probably extremely hard for you. And so I totally feel you on that. Like that would be a huge boost to morale just having that alone. I mean, you've actually played a couple shows this summer post reopening, everything, everyone getting vaccinated. How have those been? What's the crowd been like? What's the vibe been like?
I mean, fucking awesome. It's been so cool, especially like, just getting out and like, one friend will invite me to a thing, and then at that thing I'll meet like 10 cool people, and then they'll start inviting me to stuff. And none of them have been like, a big show or a crazy crowd or any of that stuff, but it's all been the right size for each event, and I've got to DJ in some cool spots. I got to DJ like kind of out in the woods on a cannabis farm. I got to DJ at a birthday party in a living room. I got to DJ on a rooftop of a building with a view of downtown Seattle and Lake Union in the background. And I got to DJ in a treehouse. That was really fun.
These all sound incredible, by the way.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
what?
for real.
Yeah, these good folks had built a treehouse on a property like 45 minutes out of town on Highway 2 for those in the area in Snohomish. But yeah, they built like a platform and a DJ table in a tree, and I got to stand up there for like 4 hours and smoke bowls and and play my favorite tunes for a bunch
Sounds
of people
dialed.
who really hadn't heard almost any of the music I was playing, which was really cool. People kept running up into the tree like, dude, what is this? It's amazing.
That's the best.
That
And-
sounds badass.
Yeah, getting a really good response. And like I'm saying, the DJing's been super fun. Meeting new people has been really awesome, and it's just been a cascade of getting invited to more and more cool events. And so that part of it has been absolutely incredible, and I wouldn't trade it. But I have noticed that since that started happening, I have had, just less time because there's been more nights I've been out doing shit. Or, all the way into the next morning still doing shit and then tired that next day. But also just like a little less like urgent motivation. There was something, especially like the first half of the lockdown, where I was feeling like really especially motivated to get a lot of shit done and be super productive, because it's like, well, I can't go travel, I can't do anything else, I can't network, I can't this, that, and the third. So I really better step it up and do all of these things, like, hey, start a podcast and learn video editing, this, that, and the third, like all these extra things. And I was writing a ton of music and drafting a ton of songs. And over the past like month, I have cut so many things down to almost zero.
Mm.
And part of it, I think is like, just getting used to being out again and being tired from partying that I hadn't done in a long time. That's a thing. Part of it, I think, is just also just like needing a general reset from the fever pitch type pace I was running myself at for months on end, where just every day I felt like I had to get a bunch of shit done. And it's been a nice contrast, like reminding myself that I don't have to be extremely productive every day for the day to have been worth it. Plus, it's summertime. I'm trying to spend more time outside.
Can you send that to me as a text message every day?
Yeah, for real.
It's not to sidetrack you, but the last 2 days I haven't been that productive, and my mood has been not great because of it. Which I think is funny. It's like something to get adjusted to, right? Like as you start to, exactly like you said, go out and do more stuff, like less time for music, and all you're comparing it to is the amount of time you had for music before. So then you're like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
But yeah, continue.
I mean, that's the heart of it, right? Things are changing, and you got to be able to accept that change and roll with it somehow. And now there's a lot more opportunities of what I can do. So I think being very aware of what I say yes to, what I am consciously giving up the opportunity to do by taking the other opportunity. Staying at home gives me the opportunity to reorganize my library or write a tune or do sound design, where going out gives me the opportunity to like play a set, meet some people, get more people aware that I'm a musician, that I'm a human, make friends, like all that shit. And both of them are dope. But now, for the first time in a long time, I'm actually having to make that decision again and balance that opportunity cost. And for a few weeks there, I just got real hooked on just going out. It's going like doing stuff like 4 nights a week all of a sudden, where I had been doing 0 nights a week for the longest. And, I'm okay with it. Honestly, I think we were talking about this an episode or two ago, where, sometimes you get overwhelmed on your tracks and you need to take a break from them. So like I have this big batch of tracks that I just have not listened to at all in about a month. And I'm really excited for whichever day I get the itch to go listen to them again and figure out, now that I barely remember what any of them sound like, figure out which ones are actually worth doing the final polish to release, and which ones I can just be totally okay letting go with, you know, that 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 feeling of like, oh, but I worked so hard on it has kind of disappeared because I don't remember the work or the song. Now I can just go back and listen to it with pretty fresh ears and make an unbiased decision on which songs don't suck.
Yeah, that's always so important. That fallacy of sunk costs. It's just crazy, especially because if you work that hard on a song, you probably liked it, maybe even loved it at the time, right? And then to back up and then compare it to other works you're working on and be like, is this as important as these other ones? It's like so hard to do in the moment, and incredibly important. That's also why, meeting new people and playing some new shows where you can test out some of those rough drafts, those test masters, and see which ones are bumping with the crowd is also super important.
Absolutely. Like with a
Yeah.
crowd on a system in between two tracks that I know work. Like if I
Mm.
if I drop my track right between Ill Gates and Rip Kenny, I know for sure whether or not my mix is up to par. Because if Ill Gates or Rip Kenny took the time to put that out, then I know, my tune has got to stand up to that on volume and frequency response and dynamics and punchiness and a whole lot of other things that become really apparent to you and anybody listening to the set you're playing as soon as you drop it. That's actually been one of the best parts for my music during this transition here, is that I have gotten a chance to sprinkle a bunch of my new tunes that I was the most confident in, and get some live feedback and take some internal notes in my head about, oh, you know what, like that tune right there definitely is lacking in the high end, or this tune right here I had to turn up 2 decibels on the DJ mixer to make it fit. And that's invaluable, and it's harder to get when you're isolated in your own room hearing stuff the exact same way. And for a hot minute there, since I didn't have any gigs, I wasn't like doing any DJ practice, and having to practice and put my shit in the set like reminded me of, like, that's maybe the best monitoring environment for like
Oh,
doing
100%.
referencing, right? Is like
Hmm.
when you literally can't touch a single knob on your track
Yeah.
to you can't affect anything, you can't change anything, you're just stuck in record box with the track you printed, and any regrets that you might have about it that you need to file away for later when you do have the chance to get back to it. That shit's
Yeah.
powerful.
It is. And like
100%.
that, and it's a fresh set of speakers
Yeah.
that you aren't accustomed to hearing music through, but you've also played a bunch of other music through already in your set.
And music I
And
know really well in
yeah,
general.
yeah. So then you're like, oh wow, like the sub on these few notes definitely doesn't hit. But it is funny how like that test of like, does it move a dance floor? Like it definitely is different than the ones you would expect, right? Like there's always like a few that you thought were going to go off that maybe you played at the wrong time or just aren't as dance floor friendly as you thought. And then the ones where you're like, yeah, like I made this beat, but I think it would work in between these songs, and then all of a sudden people are like loving it and you're like, "Oh wow, okay, so I need to probably double down on that one." Yeah, that such helpful feedback.
Yeah, that's been the biggest positive thing for me recently, is like showing all of my friends I hadn't seen in a long time on music, friends that aren't necessarily music producers, and getting their thoughts on it. That's like totally shifted the way I make music in this last little while. And like, obviously we talk all the time. We have a bunch of music producer friends, all that good stuff. But we're always approaching at it one way, and like sometimes the person's focused on the mix down or making the snare pop harder or whatever, but like everybody else has just been telling me like that song works, that's a vibe, that's not a vibe, that could be a vibe, but it's not currently. And that, like, having all of that
Yeah.
music that I thought was really good and then having that sorted out into good, has potential, does not have potential from a listener standpoint, has just, yeah, it's just really shifted my direction as far as like what I'm thinking about. And then also, like, now that I've been hanging out with people a bunch in a bunch of different situations, blah blah blah, you start to like really notice like where everybody's headspace has kind of mentally been this last little bit, what everybody else has been listening to, what kind of music they associate with this situation, like all that kind of stuff. Like, and also to hear from their point of view what each person actually hears in the song. Like, there's typically like one main thing that sticks out to people, I find. So to hear what that is for everybody is just like invaluable stuff. Like, nobody is going to give you that advice.
Yeah, dude, you know what's so funny is like my most trusted source of thumbs up, thumbs down is my girl Shelb. And even I know I've been playing her too much music over quarantine, because the other day she told me my kick drum was too loud, and I was like, all right, Tilt, no way. No way are you giving me that feedback right now. That is too much. So yeah, I need some fresh ears on my stuff. And I'm looking forward to having that opportunity. Oh man.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. But, what is it, are you willing or able or excited to give up some of that studio time? Or are you dreading that, inevitable lack of availability?
Is both an answer?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
I'm a Pisces. Both is always an acceptable answer.
Because, man, I'm glad we're talking about this today, because the last couple of days I've been feeling like a piece of shit internally, because I'm like, man, I feel like I'm letting all this time slip me away. But then there's the conflicting emotion of, oh, well, I haven't seen this person in forever and they're actually meaningful to me. Or, like just seeing like grandma and like all those kind of people in my life that I didn't get to see as much. And like internally, I'm just looking at the volume of work that I've accomplished, and I'm like, it's not up to par. Therefore, it's a bad day kind of thing. Even though I appreciate the day for what it is, there's still that voice in my head at the end of the day, like, man, you didn't do enough. You could have done more, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, like, I don't know. I feel like I've gained that valuable music insight, like I mentioned. And then also on the contrary, just like, grass is greener on the other side always. And like, I definitely remember during quarantine thinking, man, this is fucking boring. I wish I could hang out with people. I wish I could do stuff. I wish I could see this. I wish I could, get all these people together and go here. So to finally be able to start doing that. I'm in Ontario, by the way. So if you know, you know. But we just started opening up back here like a week ago. Shit's crazy, man. So like, to finally see that, I can't feel bad, because I know that's real life. Like, it's not being cooped up in the studio all the time and doing this and that. And also, I think of how many people made amazing music when everything was open again. So, I think for a period, there's going to be an adjustment period where everybody's super amped to go out. And I definitely think swimming with the current is a good idea, because you're going to get even harder FOMO if you're just watching all the sick stuff everybody's doing, this like first period here. And you're like cooped up in your studio where, hopefully you've been taking time during quarantine to work on that. And now you can kind of just take a brief period to kick back with everybody else who's going to be super excited about going out. That person that might be able to help you move forward, or, that person that might become a very meaningful friend to you for the next couple of years or the rest of your life or whatever, you might meet, because everybody's really amped up during this period. Everybody's being social. So I'm excited to lean into that more, but definitely got to find ways to like calm that inner voice and like not feel like a piece of poo for, like what kind of metrics you're achieving or whatever.
Yeah. You touched on something that that I wanted to mention, and I guess it's kind of a broader discussion point that that we can start with. And it was so centered around like, what have you learned during the quarantine period that you can then, reapply to normal life again as we retransition into more time management skills again and all of this. And one of the things that you were touching on is like, I feel like I didn't get enough done. And you kind of always, at least for me, like I go through periods of feeling like I'm really productive and feeling like I'm not. But one of the things that I learned in quarantine is there's never enough time regardless. So the skill that you need to actually learn that I realized only after going through both periods is that you need to carve the time out regardless of what your situation is. If you have all day or if you have 20 minutes, you got to carve out the time to work on music production. Like, because I had more time, I found myself like, doing some more like, watching YouTube videos or interviews or something, trying to get inspiration from other artists and other genres, blah, blah, blah. But like all of that's like kind of associated with getting better at music. And then like, other than like my modular synth, like my nighttime sound design sessions, I realized I've been kind of slacking on those. And just like in general, it's never just super easy to carve out a bunch of time to work on music or this or that. And there's always stuff that I was like, God, I wish I had 15 more minutes a day to just like work on that thing every day. And so it just taught me that no matter how much time you have, you do actually have to still focus on carving that time out and making time for all those things you want to get better at, because it's never just going to like fall in your lap. As soon as you let off the gas pedal because you think you have all the time in the world, you're not going to get there, right? So
Amen.
that's one thing that I've learned. What about you guys?
Man, like one thing I try to always think about lately is like this idea of seasons and why we have seasons and the way that events are kind of structured out in nature and stuff like that. And like COVID made me realize that like there is a definite point in that time that is like separate now. It's like this very, very clearly drawn line in this period of time. And there was a moment a couple months back when I was thinking like, man, when I was moving and shit, I was thinking, man, like it's so crazy how this phase is now over. And then this point in time is basically dead. It only exists in my memories. Like it's totally gone. All those like times you look back with like fond memories, blah, blah, blah. It's like now it's gone and now it's a new time. And then at some point, I'm going to look at this new time as I'm looking at this old time now. And yeah, I think also if you look like throughout the year, I don't know about you guys, but for me, there probably is a 3 or 4 month chunk where I produce significantly more work than in any other 3 or 4 month chunk, roughly like the seasons, right? And when you talk about like organizing your library, like networking, doing all these things, I also think back to that how like, farmers would have to like, plant the seeds and then like grow them, harvest them, blah, 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 blah. And then you go through this period of winter. And I think there's just so many parallels there between like the seasons and our productivity and our character development and like how we go through life, because it's always going to be something different that's like influencing you at any given time, whether it's the actual weather or whether it's events like this. And you're always going to look back at it as like this like chunk of time in your life. And so I don't know, man, that's just maybe even a bit of an incomplete thought there, but just something I've been thinking about to kind of make me not feel as bad of my lack of work currently, because I realize how multifaceted life is. And I realize how artificial it is for us to even be able to sit in these like high-tech rooms and produce beat boops over fucking cones that vibrate and then produce sound that we then critique and alter and then make better and put out into the world. That's fucking crazy, bro.
Yeah.
I just try and look at life as like from like a very monkey minded approach. And I'm like, man, this is so wild what's going on right now. And we're just going to do a bunch of shit until we die. And we're going to look back at these chunks of our life as memories. And that's what it's going to be. Like, there's no choice but to embrace the new and to look at the new, like, opportunities and what comes with that, you know? And like, if this is the period of time where we're going out, we're doing a bunch of stuff, everybody's like readjusting back to normal life, then that's just a part of what it is, you know? It's like when 9/11 happened, like, you might have been, I mean, I was young as hell, but like, let's say the people around at that time, they might have been in the studio, cooped up, blah, 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 been in their own little world. But there's some events that just happen that no matter how sheltered off you are at the time, or no matter how much you like push it off to the side, it penetrates everything that's going on and it affects everybody equally. And yeah, I don't know. We've been through one of those and we're finally getting out, it seems. And like, I just encourage anybody to like, with open arms, embrace all of the change, because you know, when there is a lot of change happening, like, now is really the time to, you know, grab that new opportunity, redefine yourself in more positive ways, blah blah blah, all that stuff, you know.
Yeah. And hearing you talk about it right now kind of gave me, a little visualization that you were talking about, like, we make this sound and it's these waves that vibrate these cones, right? Like, and talking about how everything kind of has these cycles and these seasons, like down to a sound wave has these cycles. It has the positive cycle and the negative cycle. Sometimes these cycles happen at faster and slower frequencies. Sometimes there's a fast frequency riding on top of a low frequency. It's like, the day to day, hour by hour differences in how you feel and how you respond to life based on like the week to month to season to year ways you deal with struggle. And, just remember, like, everything has a season. Some days you got to rest more and some days you're going to work more. Some days you just feel like you have this unlimited wellspring of energy bubbling up from inside you somewhere, and you couldn't go to sleep and turn off the computer if you tried. And other days you're just like, man, I know it's only 9 p.m., but I think I'm just going to go to bed and get rested up for tomorrow because I'm wrecked right now and it doesn't make sense for me to try and create something with zero energy in the tank. So it's like, one of my favorite books is by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's called The Four Agreements, and it's a very good book, but the fourth agreement is do your best and remember that your best is relative and it changes. Like, if you're super healthy and well rested, your best is way better than if you're like sick and like, deep in the flu, right? Like, if you're, you know, if you've trained to do something, your best is way better than if you hadn't trained as much, and a person that hasn't trained at that as much, right? And so, like, just do your best. And sometimes your best is shutting off the computer and going to take a nap. Sometimes your best is going to hang out with some people and having real connective human experience. And sometimes your best is staying up all night after all day of being in the studio writing your next favorite song you've ever made. And, accept all of those things.
Totally. I think that leads us great into this question that Slapzilla just posted.
Slapzilla, the question king.
Yeah, the question pang
Up.
king.
Big up, chat.
What
Big
is
up.
that? Actually, what kind of bird is that? That looks like a penguin, right? With the little nose bandage. But
don't even
Is that a
know.
mustache?
or she?
Or-
Do you guys
or
feel like having
beard?
positive external experiences also fuels your creativity and expression capabilities in the studio?
Yes.
Yes.
In what
Yes.
ways, though?
Yes, in a big way. Well, one that luckily enough during quarantine wasn't really inhibited too much was like for me, like getting out in nature and doing stuff. Oh, it's a pigeon. So
Pigeon gang.
is that underneath his mouth?
Squawk,
Is
squawk.
that a beak? Oh, it's his beak. Fucking duh. Like getting out in nature and, being able to actually have experiences that get me into flow state in a different way, whether that's just hiking or snowmobiling or mountain biking or whatever it is, like those experiences actually, I am 100% certain, fuel a lot of the music that I make. Like the way that it's like transportive in nature, the way that it, like the emotions that it brings about, like the energy, like like absolutely certain that a lot of those experiences translate back into the music that I make. And then I try to bridge the two as well, because I think it's a really authentic representation of myself and, kind of art imitating life, right? So yes, 100%. So that's like my personal example, but also for literally anyone, I think we've mentioned it on the show before, but a diversity of output requires a diversity of inputs. And that is one of the things that, like, when quarantine started and we were talking a little bit about like how it's affecting us and our production, like that was the first thing I thought of, because when you just see the same thing in the same places and the same surroundings day in, day out, it's really hard to break out of a creative rut. Like if you slide into a creative rut, really, really hard to break out of that when you're not taking in new stimulus. Um, so like have it the inverse of that, right? Being able to go out again and experience new things, meet new people, share different experiences, and have different trains of thought and points of view on the things that you've been thinking about. Like all of that is super beneficial in being more creative.
Yeah. Amen. Gus Class in the chat says it's refilling the well, and
100%.
absolutely. It kind of reminds me of something I heard. It's more about like helping other people, but it applies to creativity too. It's like, people talk about, like giving their energy to other people to help people out. And, but you can't give away, if you've got an empty cup, right? So basically, the practice of overflowing, you know, overflow your own cup by doing self-care and doing things that recharge you, whatever those are, so that you can give freely from the little teacup saucer underneath. Like if you overflow yourself with happiness and positivity and good vibes and creativity, then you've got so much energy to spare that you can give to other people to be helpful. And similarly to your creative pursuits, if you know if you're just hanging on by a thread, how much juice are you really going to have to give to this next tune, compared to if you had gone out and done all these things that fill you up, that getting out into nature or getting out with people or whatever makes you feel better. You're going to make better music if you feel better in general,
Amen.
you know?
Amen. Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you. I think definitely it takes some, with like everything within context. If you're really young still and you want to do music for a living and all of that, and you haven't done shit really in music, then definitely tip the scale the other way and like focus in, right? Like I'm not necessarily talking to everybody equally. I think you have to like very uh like viciously like sacrifice for what you want to get what you want. But given that and everything within reason, I think definitely like, you know, making sure to actually give yourself self-care and get outside once in a while is super important. Like I mentioned earlier, seeing what everybody else has been listening to, what music resonates with them, what music they associate with the current situation. Um, whether we're driving or whether we're at the beach or whatever, has been really insightful into like making me turn my eye towards like what other people are appreciating in music. All that kind of stuff. It's been getting me to experiment with my production choices. Uh, lyrically, it's been filling in a lot of the details of my lyrics, like new people I've been meeting, new situations I've been in. It's all been like inspiring certain vibes and stories that I want to tell and like get across. So, I think like when it was quarantine or even before quarantine, I was going super ham and not going out as much. as I maybe could have, because I wasn't anticipating a global pandemic. So now I'm kind of leaning the other way, where I'm like, all right, it's been definitely longer than the pandemic that I've been cooped up. Now let me go outside and grab inspiration from the world. And because I've built up years of like songwriting training, and like I've written all of these songs where maybe I couldn't deliver on the lyrics, or I couldn't deliver on the vibe, or maybe it was one of those songs I showed my friends where they're like, "Oh, you're trying too hard here. You're trying more than you are expressing." And it's certain stuff like that that I've realized now, like, okay, I wrote a lot of subpar stuff. I wrote a lot of stuff that could have had potential but didn't quite get there. And now that I've gotten all this practice into like how to actually write songs, how to get ideas across, blah blah blah, I find going out into the real world and exposing myself to these situations, just helps like make the songs richer, give them more context. There's more inspiration behind tailoring this song to like a specific audience or a setting or a mood or something like that, rather than me just like trying to write something that sounds fucking sick, that's a banger, just very like general kind of hypey emotions, or just like doing exercises to try to write songs. So yeah, it feels a little more genuine now that I'm going out and like, I don't know, like I said, I hesitate because there's like the duality of that, right? Like, I'm not saying by any means that I've learned everything I need to and that I'm the artist that I want to be and all of that, but I don't think that I would be as chill about it if I didn't spend the last couple years writing all these songs that were ass, because now it kind of helps like tame my mental voice that feels bad when I'm not doing shit, because I'm like, oh no, I'll turn this into a song later, or I'll like, oh no, I had to go out tonight because this person told me that this is their favorite artist, and now that's giving me like a new direction to look into, or whatever.
Those are my favorite.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, anything to like calm that inner voice. I clearly I tend to like bias towards the do more, burn yourself out approach, which I'm not saying is the best, but I've realized that's kind of like my default. So, that's something I learned too, is like now being able to pull it back and like appreciate real life more. Like I said,
Yeah.
realizing that real life is not being in a basement with cones vibrating and putting nice noises into your ears. It's actually going out and doing shit and talking to people and connecting with other human beings and all that,
Yes. Yeah.
That's been the biggest thing.
And you can take that energy back to the basement, and that's been one of the
To
coolest
the
things for
cones.
me. Is like, I've heard so much music that I wasn't listening to at all, stuff I've never heard before, like different vibes from different DJs playing different types of bass music from artists that I wasn't hip to, all the way to like just hanging out with people who have a loop station. Some cool folks I've met recently love playing with this loop station and just like making these live tunes where you just like tap the mic for a kick drum and then like start doing oohs and ahs and beatboxes and whatever on top of it, and just have multiple people just jumping on, and then like you let the song ride for 5 or 8 minutes or whatever while people are freestyling on it, and then they just delete it and they move on with their life. And it's like, whoa.
That's beautiful.
As a person that's so into like recording
What?
and
You
cataloging
don't put it in the
sounds and
stash and obsess over it for
Yeah.
2 weeks?
right, like
Uh,
that's kind of been a really cool reorganization of my thought process too, just like watching. It reminds me of those Tibetan Buddhist monks that make those like really intricate sand art
Yeah.
paintings, and then as soon as it's perfect they just wipe it clean like an etch a sketch and move on and start the next one. And it's like that, the lack of attachment that I've been watching these folks have to their creations, and just making it be the fun of the moment, the social aspect, the collaborative aspect, and all of that as opposed to the perfectionism and the editing and it's like, man, the shit sounds objectively awesome and they've literally done nothing to it. It's like, oh yeah, that one they thought to like turn on the reverb on the track when they recorded it in because the reverb sounds cool. And like past that, like there's like no, they're not worrying about EQ, they're not worried about arrangement, they're not worried about all this shit. And it's like, right, music is the feeling that moves the people, and
Yes.
everything else we're doing is like extra on top of that, and it is helpful and it is necessary for release, but remembering that that's not the actual point. Like, don't lose the forest for the trees, Luke. That's what I've been like kind of reminding myself, like, and now, like, speaking of which though, going back out, and sacrificing some days where I could have been sitting by myself in this little computer room have given me access to all of these cool humans that also make music in different ways from me that I could collaborate with. And I've talked to some of them, and a bunch of them are like, yeah, absolutely. Let's find a time to meet at the studio and lay some stuff down. If they're that good at freestyling stuff, they'll definitely be dope at freestyling into my mic and letting me capture it in the DAW. And then I can obsess about their song for weeks on end and whatever we collabing into. And I think, you know, again, think about the opportunity cost in both directions and weigh out what feels right to you today. Cause it's not this mad race for some finish line, because there is no finish line. It's about living a life you like. And I like getting out here with all these people right now. There's been times in my life where I really liked being a hermit, and I got a quadruple dose of hermitage for a year and plus, and I'm ready to swing the other direction. You know.
Yeah, totally. One thing I've been thinking about a lot too is it's it's easy, at least for me, and I'm sure at least one other person relates. Evan, like doing the album and stuff, you get so pigeonholed into like your own like very small world, very small vision. And when now that we're able to be exposed to the world again, and it's so blatantly obvious that this own world we're creating for ourselves is very, very small in an already very small world. you know it it kind of shows me like, oh, you got to pick up your feet too. Like, if your only aim is like finish this song, finish this album, and it's not have a well-rounded social life, do well for yourself, and write music and all this, you're going to be obsessing over details that don't really matter. And it's very easy to go in the opposite end of the spectrum from the Tibetan monks, where you just obsess over one piece of music or whatever. Like, you enter mental masturbation land. We've talked about this concept before.
Oh,
It
yes.
is the dark side of creativity. It's where you get into overthinking mode and all this stuff. You get super attached to your ideas, blah blah blah. And for me at least, like, something that's helped me break through a lot of barriers musically in the last couple years, when I look back, has been these couple of like key moments where something just clicks in the way that I see another artist do something, or excuse me, I see another artist do something, or maybe watch an interview or see a studio behind the scenes, and I'm like, man, these guys are doing 8 tracks a day, and I've been working on one song for 8 days. Like, shit like that really helps put things into perspective. And now, music aside, when you see that, like, yo, there's a whole like real life out in this world that I gotta be living, that I gotta be a part of, all these people who I'm part of their lives, they're part of mine, all this stuff, like, you really don't got time to be getting caught up in stupid BS, like obsessing over ideas that are not there. Anything that isn't like just bettering yourself at your craft and enjoying the journey and not getting so attached to the little souvenirs along the way.
Yeah, dude, that's one of the things that, like, what you said about the loop station is just so beautiful, and that I wish I could grasp onto more of, is like the creation as a cultivation of flow rather than obsessing over how to make this song better than the last one you just made. I mean, certainly myself, I have felt that towards the end of this album, where at the beginning it's like, okay, now I just got to write a bunch of songs and I can pick my favorites. Now that I have a bunch of songs and, you know, a good handful that I really love and like a lot that I would in all aspects be stoked to release normally. Now I'm like entering the like final, you know, maybe I've got no, I literally have a month left, 4 more writing sessions that I've given myself before I like cut it off, like no more writing, like now you got to finish it. Um I've definitely felt that my ability to let go, to create for the cultivation of flow is just so inhibited by the fact that I'm conscious of, is this song that I'm making better than any of the other ones that I've already deemed are going on the album, right? And then you you just start to like throw away good to great ideas in search of that like amazing or perfect one, and it's really hard to work like that.
Yeah.
It's really hard to get in the creative flow when you're constantly judging the stuff that you're making and not giving it a little bit of room to breathe, or making that and going, okay, that's cool, let's see what else goes with this. And then normally that thought of what else goes with this can easily lead to something that's like, wow, that's an incredible melody. Screw this bass line, screw these chords. I'm starting over. This is the centerpiece. How do I make this the best? But like when you spend, okay, well, normally I spend like 2 hours on chords. So if I'm spending 3 or 4 hours on writing a chord progression, I'm like, what the hell are you doing at this point? You know? And I've found that like the general idea sketch portion of the song takes me like 8 to 10 hours now, because I'm so worried about like this has to be this has to be so good before I even like deem it worthy to turn into a full song. Because like, yeah, it's just really, really easy to get in your head with that stuff. And like you just said with the loop station, or like the the monks that make sand paintings, they just wipe off. Like, oh my god, dude, I need I literally need to start doing that just to cultivate that skill of
It's like purposefully wiping your hard drive after a really good session.
That sounds so painful when you say it
I
like
can't
that.
even
Right.
I can't even my productivity brain is literally screaming and on fire just with the thought of that. Um
Shows your
Definitely.
attachments, right? Shouts out to
but
the Buddha.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, like, it's like I said, it's easy to get in that rut of overjudging your stuff. And also like when there haven't been festivals or shows to go to, like the new music that you hear that really just like catches your ear, that you wouldn't have found by yourself because your Spotify Discover Weekly wouldn't even guess to send you this song. Like those kinds of sets that you see at festivals from people you might not have heard of, but one of your friends is like, oh no, this is my favorite new up and coming bass music dude. Um, like those sets provide so much inspiration. I can't tell you how many, like literally every time I go to Shambhala Music Festival up in Canada.
God, can't wait for that to be a thing again.
Oh, I've been
I know they've been
deprived of
doing
that.
their like one stage at a time mini shows this summer, and I've been like
Hmm.
looking at them with FOMO. Like, man, I can't even get into Canada.
Yeah, massive FOMO. Um, but yeah, being deprived of that like monumental like inspiration flow that comes out of that, like it's really tough to, you know, continue to push boundaries when most of the music that you're already listening to is stuff that sounds similar to other stuff that's made, right? Like it's really hard to have that pure music discovery from someone top level curating a whole experience in which you can understand the nuance of each song and what makes it work because it's put next to a bunch of songs in a similar context. And um yeah, all of that culminating to it's difficult to write music this time period or not. And we could always be better, but you got to cultivate that flow rather than judgment.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and thinking about the new opportunities that are open and the opportunities that we had and that idea of like swimming with the current, like
Very
everybody
Taoist.
is
Shouts out to Dow Moon, homie from the dojo.
shout out. It's lost my train of thought a bit here.
No
But
worries.
Choo choo.
Gotta
yeah,
go with
man,
the
I
flow,
totally
man.
lost that. That's
It's
not
okay,
bad.
man. You'll come back to it as soon as you change topics. So Slapsola asked if anyone's going to Lost Lands, and I just also want to combine that with anybody got any festival tickets or show tickets or things that are getting announced that they're excited for. Because I know I am. I'm not going to Lost Lands, but I am going to Base Canyon. I got tickets for me and my sibling to go to Base Canyon, and I've never been. It's been a hot minute since I've been out to the Gorge out here in Washington State. I'm super excited for it. The lineup looks insane. Not super pumped for the Gorge's way they do policing and security, which is really uptight. It's in a very conservative area, and they really hate EDM shows. It seems like, and not the venue themselves, but the way that the police respond and the way they have to do security. It's like these stupid long lines and no re-entry. Like once you go in for the day, you have to stay in. You can't go back and change costumes and shit. It's kind of silly, but I am going to that because Excision put together a hell of a lineup and it's gonna be bananas. And then I'm also going to like a super small festival out here closer to Seattle in Olympia in a couple weeks called Pixie Dust Festival. That's August 7th. And that looks super lit. It's just like a 1-day festival on the Puget Sound. Looks super fun. And a dude I DJ'd a couple of parties with this month let me know about it. And I've been telling a ton of people about it. So hopefully we'll get a whole crew going. I'm excited about that. And then
Hell yeah.
I think I can talk about this. I just got tapped to open for Ill Gates in Seattle when he tours through in November. So I already got a November booking and super pumped for that because that makes up for the time that I was supposed to open for Dylan at the same venue in May of last year, which, as you can probably guess, did not happen. Getting back out there, watching shows, playing shows. What about you guys?
Would you like to go, Evan?
I was gonna say you go for it,
man. Because honestly,
y'all tripping over each other not to talk about this.
I don't have any too concrete of plans. Honestly, I'm just waiting to see what happens with the border here. We got some. We got like the mandatory hotel stays and stuff, which really jacks up the price if you got to do that. I'm still waiting to be fully vaccinated and just figure out what the whole situation is with travel and all that stuff before I do anything too drastic. Shambhala might be on the menu. I don't know.
They're
Honestly,
not doing it until next year, so definitely plan to come and kick it in camp with us. 2022 at Shambhala, because I want to see you, bro.
Definitely, and I have to make it out there considering I was out west and now I moved more east away from Shambhala and I didn't even get the chance. But all of that stuff, like I am excited about the festivals, but I'm kind of gonna let that pan out and see what happens. There's only a couple that I would still go to nowadays. Like I'm more excited to just like go see different cities, and now I got friends that do music or friends from high school that have moved out and got jobs in different places and just catch that inspiration, and I don't know. I feel like music's finally like fully integrated into my life. It's all I've ever done 24/7 for the last couple of years. So I'm just excited to like just actually see people and like kick it and like hang with you guys and obviously we'll make some music too, but man, we make so much music. I'm just excited to like chill.
Yeah. No, it's funny because I really wanted to go to Base Canyon, but I have a wedding that weekend and wah, wah, wah. Type F in the chat for not being able to go to that show. Because I was actually, as soon as that got announced, I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to that. And doesn't work out. But yeah.
E-sharps in the chat.
Yeah. Exactly. And yet, like, to be honest, so I moved down to Bend like a year and a half ago, and that was like basically I had winter and then COVID happened, and I never even really got a chance to like go out and see what the local music scene here is about. And so there's a couple shows coming up locally that I'm excited to go to, and then like I said, couple festivals up in Washington at the end of summer. One of them that I'll be playing at that I'm really, really excited to go to. But in general,
if you can't announce on the podcast, definitely announce it to me after we get off air,
Yes,
so I can buy
I will.
tickets to wherever the fuck you're playing. Because it's been
Yeah.
way too long since I got to get down at a Rip Kenny set since 2019. People, that's too long.
Yeah,
Damn.
very, very much looking forward to that. But yeah, really, I'm struggling trying to think about anything except finishing this damn album because I actually
good. That's good.
I put together a list
in the right place.
I put together a list of all the shit that I need to do to finish it still, because I'm trying to like, actually have a good PR plan, and like I still have to write the story that goes along with all of it and make the video that goes along with all of it and tie all that together. And there is a lot of work to be done, and I am feeling the pressure.
Amen, bro.
Pressure is good. The pressure is your friend.
It is actually
just don't let it become your enemy.
It definitely helps me get shit done when I'm feeling that. So
yeah, and definitely shits all over your mental health.
Oh, big time. Ooh wee.
Yeah. It's a blessing and a curse for sure.
Yeah, I think
that's like,
go for it.
I was just gonna say, I think that's another part. Again, like so many things in life have this like duality to them, where it's like you get creativity, but also you're prone to getting stuck in mental masturbation land. Then it's like you have this fire under your ass to go do stuff, and so you achieve a lot, but then it shits all over your mental health. It's like finding the fine balance and like recognizing that everything kind of comes with like this cost to it, or it comes with this like darker side to it that you have to learn to manage.
Yeah,
it's like the good wolf and the bad wolf or whatever.
Anything's got a shadow, right?
Exactly. And so like I think, like finishing an album especially is such a daunting task. It's a lot of work, and you don't want to put in all of this work to then release something subpar, but then that just feels like more attachment, and the attachment makes it harder to write stuff. You start
exactly
8 hours on chord progression, all that stuff. I think trying to like separate yourself 1 degree further from like an outsider kind of perspective and ask yourself like objectively, how does this play into the bigger picture? Like, I know this sounds really obvious, but there are certain things where like I'll see people in my life, or what was it? Like there was something I was talking with my parents like a couple months ago where they're like, oh, we used to get really irritated like when there'd be like socks on the floor. You come home like from work, you do the dishes, you do all this, you're exhausted, and then like someone leaves their socks on the floor and it pisses you off in the moment. But then after like 10 years, we realize it doesn't really matter. And that conversation really stuck with me. And I try to ask myself, like, do I need to flip out for 10 years to learn this lesson? Or can I like separate myself 1 degree further and ask myself, if I went through this for 10 years, what would my conclusion be? And then do the opposite. Like, I pull that parallel to so many other areas of my life, because it's like literally a couple interviews I watched like back to back with some artists that I really love. And they were talking about like, man, I love my first project, but it took me so like 4 years or whatever to release because I kept getting more attached. I kept hating this. It lost some of the flavor here because I kept redoing takes, blah, blah, blah. And they all say like, yeah, now music just flows so much easier and I just let it go, And I try to ask myself again, like, do I need to be stingy with like 10 albums worth of material for me to learn this lesson? Or can I like remove myself 1 degree further of separation and look at it objectively and be like, oh, okay, instead of me actually writing 10 albums worth of shit to learn this, how about I just like pull back, interpolate what will happen, and then bring that lesson back with me to the present and then try to adjust accordingly. I know that sounds
Yes.
kind of obvious, but like
But nobody
that
thinks
line of
that way. It's
thinking
so
changes so
important,
much
bro.
shit. I know.
Oh, it's
Oh,
so
don't
important.
at me, bro.
It super reminds me of something I've thought like about gratitude and the gratitude gap. Like something happens to you, say you go through a rough breakup or something, right? And then it'd be like 5 years later, you like see some lesson you've learned from that shit situation 5 years ago benefit you. And you're like, oh, actually, I'm grateful I went through that because it's helping me right now. And you stop and realize, like, oh man, like that means I can probably like forgive some of this anger I've been holding on to, and I can move past it, and I can find a way to be grateful for the life I've lived, even though parts of it sucked to go through at the time, right? And so once I started noticing that about some of the toughest things I had personally gone through, like say breakups or disappointments or, hard lessons learned, whatever, right? I started thinking, okay, well, if 5 years can turn this is the worst day of my life to, well, I'm actually not that mad that happened, or I'm actually kind of glad that happened, to I'm actually grateful for this for sure. Could 5 months do that? What about 5 weeks? How about 5 days? 5 hours? 5 minutes? 5 seconds? What's the minimum amount of time in which I could find gratitude for something? And what if I just fast forward all that time, like you're talking about? Why wait 10 years of being angry at something before you realize it's not that big a deal and you can keep living your life and be happier today? And I think that's awesome because, like, the pandemic started, and there's obviously that first wave of seeing the shadow it casts. Like, oh, fuck, live venues are going to be closed. All my shows are canceled. I can't see my friends or family. I might lose my job. So many people are dying. Oh my God, right? All the worst parts are super obvious. And then naturally, we've got to, try and find some sort of silver lining just to keep our sanity. Well, yeah, that all sucks, but hey, at least I have time to do X, Y, or Z. Hey, well, at least there's this, right? And same thing coming out of it. We've been used to and accustomed to living with that silver lining, and now it can be scary to go back and be like, fuck, it's opening back up. What if people start getting sick again? What if we go back into lockdown? What if this? We could look at all these potential shadows that might come with it, but we got to reaccustom ourselves to just like, okay, no, like we don't just have to look for silver linings on the cloud. We can also just like look at the sunshine and remind ourselves that shadows get cast. If there's a shadow, it's because there's light. Shadows don't happen in the darkness. That's just darkness. Shadows and light go hand in hand in this world of matter. And so like learn to take that step back that Tesco's talking about, where you can take a step back, look at your life over its whole frame, the evolution you've gone through, and extrapolate that into the future and be like, oh, like, you know what? I bet I can learn this lesson faster, or I bet I can be grateful for this situation if I just take a deep breath and look for the thing to be grateful for.
Man, it
that
makes me
is
think
yeah.
of that. Sorry, Evan, but
No, you're
just to
good.
tack on to that point, it makes me think of that Charlie Rocket idea, and I love the way that he says it too, because he's like, there's a reason Santa only comes to deliver presents in the dark, is because you can't see him. So the same when you're like going through this fucked up situation, you're so fixated on this like negative thing, you don't even realize all these blessings happening in the background until one of them hits you directly in the face and you have to address it, right? It's like the same idea. Like, obviously Santa is a metaphor for life setting up a positive situation in the future, but there's no reason you couldn't enjoy it sooner if you weren't so fixated on, what's clouding your vision, what's directly in front of you, that negative thing.
Yeah, that's such a good analogy for quarantine in general. Both of what you guys just said really helps kind of put things in perspective for sure. for sure. I mean, like acute experience of the past few months as well as the past 2 years on the macro, like really, really, really taking that one to the bank for sure.
Amen. Ain't that why we do this?
True.
Because we help inspire each other and push each other through, and we learn so much, and also, get to share this with the humans as we all learn it real time.
In the end, it is about the humans.
The human experience as we learn it podcast.
Amen. Yeah, I think that feels pretty good. What do y'all think?
That feels like a bow.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it
too. All right. Well, thanks for being here with us, humans. Till next week, a big peace out and a what? Peace among worlds. Ha 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 ha.
Peace among worlds.
Yes, humans. Thank you so much for being here with us again this week. We truly appreciate you. Make sure you tell a friend, leave a comment, smash the like and subscribe, hit that bell for the notifications, leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Wherever you are, just show us some love and it'll help more cool producers like you find what we're doing here. Real quick, the song of the week behind me is Rip Kenny 2020. You can get the links for that down below and go support our dude. Make sure to follow us at The Human Music Podcast or at Human Music Pod on Twitter. And go to thehumanmusicpodcast.com to find out a lot more. Get some free sample packs and even some that we're selling you. Finally, support our sponsors. You can get Dojo TV, get some free live stream classes from the Producer Dojo Senseis, the weekly download for just $20 a month. You get weekly live streams from Ilgates himself and instant access to over 240 more episodes in the archive. Finally, guest practices where you can learn from Seth Drake at the Approach Institute. The best engineer we know will give you the first class for free, so you know it's worth it. All right, until next week, everybody, peace. Peace among worlds. I like it.